Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are here to examine the Clean Future Act, but it reminds me during the Vietnam War, an American general was paraphrased as saying, we had to destroy the town to save it. We had to destroy the town to save it. It reminds me of the motivation behind this proposal. The goal of the act is to decarbonize the U.S. economy by 2050, have net zero emissions from power plants by 2035, 80% by 2030. In so doing, well, we're going to destroy livelihoods, disrupt families, decimate communities, increase utility bills, threaten the stability of our grid, and we will still experience negative effects of climate change since the rest of the world isn't following suit. Look, Chairman, we agree we need to work to reduce carbon emissions, but we also need to understand the consequences before we rush into such a punitive action. Let's keep in mind, last year, 60% of our power came from fossil fuels, coal, gas, and oil. It's reasonable to understand that this total transformation, is it reasonable to undertake this total transformation of our electric grid in less than 14 years or even 9? Look at solar energy. They're predicting that in their publication this week, they're predicting that they're going to quadruple their capacity in solar in the next 10 years. That, now, make sure we understand, that means they're going from 2.3% of the mix to 9%. But remember, coal and gas are still 60%. According to the utilities we've consulted, decarbonizing our power sector by 2035 and 80% by 2030 will take a miracle. So Paul, at what cost? It will increase costs for families with higher utility bills. According to the Institute for Energy Research, $2,000 per household annually. It'll destroy jobs, not just coal miners and pipeliners, but all the secondary jobs that rely on them. The railroad workers, the barge operators, the machinists, the fabricators, I can go on and on. Where will these workers go? Many of them are making $70,000, $80,000, $100,000. We get these vague promises about making solar panels or windmills. About these promises, Terry Sullivan, the president of the International Labor Union, said, it's pie in the sky BS. And he didn't say BS about this green jobs being good middle class jobs. He said, because they're not. As a result, single industry towns like Welch, West Virginia, Gillette, Wyoming, Hazard, Kentucky, Cadiz, Ohio, they're going to be crushed. Not to mention, we will be left with a grid that is far less reliable and resilient with more frequent blackouts. Haven't we learned anything from California and Texas about how fragile our grid is? And for what gain? Even if America totally decarbonizes, the rest of the world is still increasing its consumption of fossil fuels. We still will have wildfires on the West Coast, droughts and flooding in the Midwest, and hurricanes on the East. Mr. Chairman, we want to work in a bipartisan fashion to address climate change and utilize all of the above energy resources. This committee has demonstrated a history of bipartisanship, and if you'll let us, we can do it again. Let's not destroy the village in order to save it. So we have, on our panel, we have Kevin Sunday from the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce, who's going to be testifying today. He will explain Pennsylvania's dependence on fossil fuel resources for economic growth and job creation, and discuss the devastation, the impact this legislation will have on his state. I look forward to this conversation today, and I hope that we can work with Frank Pallone and all of you on this committee, how we can make this a bipartisan bill, or start with something that is bipartisan from the very beginning. So I thank you, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back.